Backstage Pass Radio is now a global podcast heard in 70 countries around the world. Our newly formed partnership with Synad Outdoor has us seeing great traction in Texas and Louisiana. Since Synad's beginnings in 1964, this family-owned and operated advertising company has become the largest independently held billboard company in Texas today. Synad prides itself on unbeatable service and turnaround time. Let their experienced design team create the perfect advertisement to showcase your business. Contact Synad today at 713-861-6013. And also make sure to visit their website at www.synad.com and tell them Backstage Pass Radio sent ya.
This is Backstage Pass Radio.
Backstage Pass Radio.
A podcast by an artist for the artist. Each week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite musicians and the music they created. From chart-topping hits to underground gems, we explore the sounds that move us and the people who make it all happen. Remember to please subscribe, rate, and leave reviews on your favorite podcast platform. So whether you're a casual listener or a die-hard music fan, tune in and discover the magic behind the melodies. Here is your host of Backstage Pass Radio, Randy Halsey.
Well, I'm here in the studio with drummer extraordinaire Rikki Rockett of Poison. Rikki, how are you, bud? It's great to see you, man.
I'm doing great. I'm a little frustrated. I'm in Pro Tools and I'm getting frustrated with something because I'm by myself. I'm not an engineer, you know.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you know, to edit this show, I'm an Adobe guy, and it's amazing how complex these tools are, you know. And I know a lot of people that do, you know, the recording stuff, probably, which is what you're doing, I'm assuming, but there's so many features of these tools. We can only touch on just a minute bit of what they offer up, right? I mean, they're just complex as hell.
I actually know Final Cut better than I know Pro Tools, which is a shame that I, you know, as a musician. But I'm putting some drums together for my wife is making a record, so so she asked me to play drums on it. So I'm like, okay, now you got me as an engineer, just heads up.
Are you saying you're getting the B team, honey? That's what I'm giving you, the B team stuff. Well, good for you, man. Well, it sounds like you're staying busy. And so, you know, thanks for being here and jumping on and chatting with myself and the listeners of Backstage Pass Radio. And you know, I guess we could jump like right into the music, but I did want to touch just quickly on a personal thing because I think there needs to be a human element to everything that we do. But it's not a mystery that you're a cancer survivor, right? How is the cancer thing today? Are you in remission? Can you speak a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, sure. I'm coming up on 9 years in remission. Yeah, it's was pretty miraculous, really, because I only really had about a 10% chance of making it, because I was stage 4. It didn't get better. I did chemo radiation. It didn't get better, and I wound up down at Moore's Cancer Center, which is part of UCSD. In San Diego, and Dr. Ezra Cohen took me on as a patient and got me on a clinical trial. And in about 9 to 12 weeks, it was gone. It was amazing.
Was this like an alternative type treatment to radiation and chemo?
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people are receiving it now. It got FDA, I'm going to say the place wrong. It got approval shortly after my trial ended. And so my trial was a big part of that. I mean, I wasn't the only one on the trial, of course, but yeah, they pushed it into high gear once they saw my response.
Wow. Is this so? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the immunotherapy? Am I correct there? Or am I off base?
No, that's exactly what it is. Yep.
Wow. So you wake up, you wake up one day, are you feeling bad? Like what? Because I hear horror stories about the cancer stuff. In fact, I had a buddy that was on the show some years back, and he said, I was out playing in an Ozzy tribute band, right? He was the lead guitarist. And he said we were playing a Thursday night down at Rise Rooftop, and I just didn't feel myself, man. I didn't feel real well. Went to the doctor, and like 3 weeks later, stage 4 lung cancer, and within 2 months, he's dead. He's gone. It's like, what in the
Wow.
hell, you know? So I didn't know. Was that a similar type of thing for you? Did it come out of the clear blue? Had there been warning signs? Can you speak to that?
The thing that was odd about it is the whole family had a sore throat, including me. We all had sore
Oh,
throats. We're like, yeah, this thing sucked. So we went to the doc, got meds. My wife got better, kids got better. I didn't. So I went back and I'm like, I didn't get it. I didn't get better. They're good, but maybe I got it. He said, well, maybe you have a secondary infection. Let's go ahead and scope you. Have you ever had that? And I went, no. He goes, well, we go up your nose and look down your throat, and I can see if there's anything else going on. And when he did, there was something else going on.
oh,
And it was a lump on the base of my tongue. And, I wound up with the thing that tipped him off was I had a lymph node that was swollen, like
okay.
really bad. And way more than like you can feel them sometimes if you're sick a little bit, but this was you could see it in the mirror.
Sure.
And so that was another big tip off too. And so yeah, so then I went through, getting biopsies and all that stuff, and then went into treatment.
So it's lump, sore throat, and then a little bit of time later, hey Ricky, you're stage 4. This is the news that you get, or was it in a 3 and then it went to 4? Like what did you find out initially?
Yeah, so head and neck cancer is actually staged higher for some
Oh,
reason.
I got you.
So if it's a 2, they call it a 3. I don't know why. I don't remember the answer, but
Okay.
and I think they may have changed that now. But the reason I was stage 4 is because we did the chemo and radiation and we did all that and it didn't work. So now it jumped to the other side. There's other lymph nodes involved. And that's why it became stage 4. So now I can't do radiation because I've already done it.
Okay.
The chemo may keep it at bay if I try something else. Surgery is an option, but they wanted to take my whole tongue out. And so the other option was immunotherapy. But if it didn't start to respond, I could get to the point of no return.
Jeez.
So it was a roll of the dice. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to live with no tongue and a bag and all this stuff and a
Jeez.
stoma. I don't know. Uh, what I know I do want to try is this immunotherapy. So when I went to the doc, he goes, you know what? I think we do have time. I have a way of getting around some of this. If it seems like it's going the wrong direction, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. So we did it. And the first imaging they did, I mean, it was a tiny little bit left,
Right.
tiny.
Uh-huh.
And within a couple of weeks later, that was gone too. And it's never
No
come
way.
back.
Wow. How lucky are
Yeah.
you? Jesus Christ.
Very,
Wow.
extremely lucky.
Wow.
Extremely
What a
lucky.
great story. Well, yeah, what a great story. I mean,
I
because
mean, I was,
usually
I
that's
was,
not the outcome, right? As you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I bought a video camera and was videotaping myself, giving my kids life lessons, so they could reference it as they got older. Um, and so when all that cleared up, I used the video camera to start my YouTube channel. So that's how that went.
Sure.
Yeah, try to make the
Well,
best of it.
well, what a great outcome to kind of what started out as a horrific story for you. But I think they always say, what's the old adage? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I think you probably there was a whole lot of soul searching you did during that time. I'm quite sure of that, right? I would,
Absolutely,
as a man,
absolutely.
I would certainly put a lot of things in perspective of life and how valuable it really is. And we look past that sometimes because we just take things for granted, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's, that I've learned a lot of lessons, and people are like, "Oh, what's the biggest takeaway?" Biggest takeaway now for me is I don't tolerate somebody wasting my time.
100%.
If somebody says they're going to do something and they don't, That's it. I'm done.
I love it. I
Because
love it.
that's one thing I learned is we just don't have as much time as we think.
Sure.
The whole we'll do it next week, we'll do it next week. You can have 99 problems, but if you have a medical problem, you got one.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Greatly
it'll
said.
stop
Yeah.
you in your tracks,
It
it'll
will.
stop you in your tracks.
It will.
So yeah, you can't take it for granted, absolutely. And I'm still don't go to the doctor maybe as much as I should and stuff like that. But I'm much more in tune with myself, I'll tell you that much.
I get it. And it's interesting because as my parents get older, probably 15, 20 years ago when they were in their probably, let's call it 60s, right? They were going to the doctors a lot. And it wasn't because they were not healthy, it was because they were doing preventative things. And my brother and I would constantly just, give them the business about, you got another doctor's appointment today and
Right,
yada, yada,
right.
yada. And then you fast forward to they're both, 82, and they're, for the most part, they're healthiest horses because they did all of the things that they should have been doing a long time ago. And I think so many times, not to make this a public service announcement for going to the doctor,
Hey, listen,
but if you, it's like
honestly,
a
I don't
car, right?
mind.
You're a car guy.
Yeah.
Like if you don't take care of the car, the problem just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it costs you a whole lot of money, I guess is the point I'm making, right?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't, I, you know, it's triggering sometimes to talk about it, I'll be honest.
Mhm.
But at the same time, if I don't pay it forward, then what the hell did I go through all this for?
Sure.
You
And
know,
that's the beauty of this, I think, because we have a 90 plus country outreach on this podcast. And I mean, if it touches one person's life, then you and I have, isn't that a great thing, right? If it just changes
absolutely.
one
And you know
person.
what? Mine was driven by HPV, the HPV virus,
Okay.
which there's like 42 strains. Okay.
Yep.
I think it's number six that's typically causes this, I believe. I might be wrong, or I'm not sure about that. But so the vaccine that new generation, like my kids, are able to get, it's a two-time vaccine. You get two shots,
Okay.
6 months apart. That's it. They're not going to get HPV.
Okay.
And because I don't get HPV, they're not going to get HPV-driven cancer, which could be cervical, it could be
Sure.
anal, it
Okay.
could be, my case, it was, at the base of tongue, which is pretty common with,
Mhm.
I mean, there's, Bruce Dickinson, a bunch of us have had
Okay.
it. Um, and, but, with the next generation, we might get rid of it,
Sure.
so,
Absolutely.
and I absolutely, this is like no politics at all. But I just want to make sure that there's good information out there. It's not a harmful vaccine. Nobody's died from it. People die from HPV.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then you spread it to somebody else, and then
Yes.
you spread it to somebody else, and maybe four or five people don't get cancer from it, but maybe that one does, and you don't know.
Yeah.
You could have I could have spread it years ago with a girl I was with or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll never know.
No.
I'll never know.
There's no way to
Probably.
benchmark it. There's no way to pinpoint it, right? I mean,
No,
what
we're getting
it is
there.
what it is, right? Yeah. Well,
We're
is this
getting there.
this go ahead, finish your thoughts. Sorry about that.
No, there's some tests being developed, and there's ways to detect it
Okay.
now. But
Interesting.
so it's, especially for women, they just get a pap test. But
Yeah.
but guys, it's a little hard. There's no like good blood test, but there's a few things coming out now.
Okay.
So hopefully it'll be even more diagnostic in the
Yeah.
future.
Interesting stuff. Is this the same cancer that Eddie Van Halen had? Didn't he have a mouth or a tongue cancer as well? Or do you remember
He was
that?
a little, and forgive the pun, a little tight-lipped about it. He um I don't know for sure.
Okay. All right.
He tried to, he smoked a lot, he
Yeah.
drank.
Yeah.
He said it came from holding a metal pick in his mouth. Could have been all those things.
Of course.
But I don't know if it was HPV driven or not. I don't know that.
Yeah.
If it's HPV, actually, there's a better chance with it, believe it or not.
Well, just I
For
don't
some
know.
reason, they found it.
I don't know why something about him stood out orally, like there was some kind of oral cancer, something of the mouth. I just don't remember.
It was oral
what it was.
cancer for sure. I just
yeah.
don't know what specifically.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it was the lining of the throat. I don't know if it
Okay.
was, the tongue. Usually it's the tongue. And
Yeah.
they say throat cancer, and it's really base of tongue or
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
It can be lots of things. There's lots
Yeah.
of stuff. Esophageal. There's a bunch of
Yes.
things in there.
Yep.
So, but for some reason, the HPV kind of buries in the base of tongue
Wow.
more often.
Well, I didn't mean to take you down a medical rabbit hole there, but it's good
well, we
to
got
hear,
it out of the
right,
way.
man? It's good to hear. And again, it's there's a lot of things that I've covered on this show that musicians have morphed their way into the conversation, whether it's anxiety and depression or cancer. It's funny how when you get to just talking to people, just the conversations flow sometimes. And again, like I said, if it serves as a PSA for one person, then you and I have done a good deed, right? At the end of the day.
I've done a lot of them. I've shown up for
I'm sure.
panels. I've spoken. I've done, at different events, and I'm not going to say I don't mind it. I don't like going to those events because there's a lot of people hanging on my words that have maybe going through something right then, and
Yes.
and it's hard. It's hard to, and it's triggering. You're back in a hospital or
Of
wherever it
course.
is. But again, I got to suck it up and, face
Yep.
my fears and, try to make other people feel good. I've mentored quite a few people through it. Um, and sometimes it helps. But not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't want to listen to you. They're like,
Yeah.
it's just my way. And I get that, I
Of
totally
course.
get that. I reached out to the singer for Three Doors Down. Haven't heard back from him yet. But if he's comfortable talking to me, great. If he's not, I'm sure he's got a great team.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, but if he needs another rock guy or music guy that's, been through some stuff, I'm the guy. I'm
Yeah.
one of
Well,
them
I
anyway.
just saw that video not too long ago. I guess that surfaced on social media, and I was like, wow, nobody's like immune to it, right? I mean, we're all human at the end of the day, but I think there's an old adage, you fight the good fight, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. So hats off to you for being willing to go to the panels and the things that take our time, but it's, you're paying your experience forward, and we need more people like that in the world. I think that's a good thing, Ricky. So
Well,
good to you.
cool. So the thing, so I'm doing something for prostate cancer too right now. I'm part of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. As a matter of fact, I just got my patch in the mail as
Okay.
a
All right.
one of the city co-hosts. I've been doing it about 8 years. I haven't been a city co-host for 8 years. I'm only 2 years now. And so I'm playing. We're doing a fundraiser 2 days before. Fundraiser on Friday, ride on Sunday. This ride is in over 1,000 cities
Okay.
across the world, all at the same time. But we're doing a fundraiser in Los Angeles here at the Ovation, and Rockett Mafia is playing. So
Awesome. Very good.
it's a free show. We just ask people to donate, and it also benefits men's mental health and
Good.
suicide prevention.
Very good.
So it's kind of a man-driven
Yeah.
cause, but we have a lot of women involved. You'll see these women showing up in suits, and it's pretty cool.
We have needs too, right, Ricky?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Hey, it's on the rise. Men committing suicide is,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's more stress or I don't know what it is, but it's higher than it has been in the
Sure.
past. So it's definitely a thing.
Well, think about where we are, like in the I don't know what kind of years you call it. I'm 59 years old. It's not a mystery, right? And I just think that times have changed since we were young kids running around, right? Prices are higher, like taxes, and just all of the things. And it's we went through a whole pandemic that shut the world down for a while, and I think we're still trying to kind of recover from some of that. Things are not
Oh,
completely back to the
absolutely.
way they were as we knew them before, 2019 or whatever year that was. But it's a different time, man, and it's an interesting time as well.
I don't know that we'll ever completely recover from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That it's always going to leave a dent. You know, there was businesses that went out
Yep.
never to come back,
Right.
things like that. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
I think we all learned a lot from it. Everybody learned something from that. So
Yep.
in some ways, I try to look at it that way. You know, what do we do the next one that rolls around? And there will be another one eventually.
Yep.
You know, you can't duck it, and it could be worse.
Sure.
It could be one of these things that, you know, that kills 75% of people. You never
Exactly.
know, you know, like a
Exactly.
black plague or something, you know, you
Yep.
never know.
You really
So,
don't.
and
Well, tell me a little bit, tell myself and the listeners a little bit about your childhood. I guess we go back to, is it Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, where you're originally from? Talk a little bit
Mhm.
about the childhood, like any siblings growing up, and do you come from a musical house? Because I see a lot of the bigger name artists and even the local and regional artists, like they don't come from a musical background. So I wanted to hear a little bit about your upbringing and what was going on in your home from a music perspective growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs, and I have a sister. She's 9 years older than me, actually, and she still lives back there. She's not Mechanicsburg, but she lives back east still. My dad was a taxi driver. My mom was a telephone operator. Um, and my dad played trumpet. And he did all the way from before he joined the Marine Corps and till after, and then he played in bands here and there, but he was taking care of us kids, you know what I mean, and trying to hold a job down.
Of
So,
course.
but he played and encouraged me to play when so I started playing trumpet. But it just wasn't my thing. I wanted to play drums, you know what I mean? And he liked it. He thought that was a great idea. So he encouraged it for sure. Um, my mom could sing. She was in, uh, she had been in plays and that kind of stuff, musicals and things when she was growing up, but she never pursued it after school. And but but my dad loved black music. He loved James Brown and
Okay.
but also stuff like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, anything with a good beat and horn sections.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Santana, like all that stuff. He liked that stuff. My mom was an Elvis fanatic. My sister was a Beatles fanatic.
Okay.
um, I had it from all. And me, I came out and I decided I like Deep Purple and stuff like that.
There you go. Right. Right. Oh,
Johnny Winter, and
there you
that
go.
was some of the first bands that I got into. The first band I ever saw was Johnny Winter.
Really. Okay.
The first real professional band. Um, and Brownsville Station opened for them. Smoking in the Boys Room. That's
Yeah.
who opened
I
for
remember
them.
that. Yeah.
And then I saw him again. He came back, and I saw him again with Mountain, with Leslie
Leslie
West.
West. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and then the next concert I saw was Aerosmith. Um, and I saw Kiss, I saw Boston, I saw a lot of bands. Bob Seger on one
Yeah.
of his first tours. Uh, Deep Purple with Tommy Bolin playing guitar.
Mhm.
Um, God, I saw some cool stuff, man.
Yeah. I
I
bet.
really got to tell you, I was Harrisburg and Philly and all that whole area. We got a lot of concerts. I got to
Yeah. I
tell you.
bet. Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, I guess that's kind of, if I remember correctly, that's kind of where um, Daryl Hall and John Oates cut their teeth on the streets of
Yeah, no,
Philly,
they're
right? Am I
from
right?
Philly.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
so.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. Blue
So I had
Philly had
Elliot
a lot of
Lewis. Yeah, yeah. I had Elliot Lewis on my show who played with Daryl Hall and John Oates and the Average White Band for many, many years. And we talked a little bit about, them coming up in the, doo-wopping in the streets of Philly, it's as youngsters, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Before it
Yeah,
was
there were
Hall and Oates as we know it.
Boys to Men came out of there,
Yeah.
and a lot of other blue-eyed soul,
Yeah.
as they call it.
Yep.
And Hall and Oates still, I mean, you go back and you listen and you go, man, those dudes could sing.
Shit. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I
They
wish I
they
had
definitely
half that ability to sing. Yeah.
they definitely had a thing going on. What do you remember, like what year or how old you were when you caught the just the musical bug in general? Was it a young
Yeah.
age or was it a teen thing for you? Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I was like, so two things happened to me. And by the way, I have a book coming out, and I talk about all this stuff in more depth. But my sister would get the unfortunate uh, duty of babysitting me from time to time,
Okay.
and I wasn't always the easiest one, and so I did something wrong, and she threw me in my room for the night. But she felt a little bit bad, so she gave me a record player and a bunch of Beatles records. So I sat there and I put a phone book on my bed, and I found a couple other things to hit and Lincoln Logs, and pretty soon I'm playing to Ringo,
Hmm.
over and over, 8 days a week.
Yeah.
And she came in late. She's like, "That sounds pretty good." And so her boyfriend I, gave me this set of bongos to try, but then he put them in his car, but the window was open. So a couple days later, I stole them and hid them under my bed. I was not a thief, but I wanted those drums. Okay.
You weren't a thief, but you did steal the bongos, right?
But those I did. Okay. I made an exception. All right.
There you go. Right on.
So a couple of months later, I'm at a camp with my buddy Lee, and they had a band playing there. And the drummer was great. I just kept listening to the drummer. They're catching crayfish and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. I want to watch this band. Well, the guy's bongos, it was his dad.
Uh,
That's who was playing.
gotcha.
So
Yeah.
I was pretty inspired by that. So when I was 12, I found a set of drums for sale. Um, and they were cheap, but it had a Rogers Dynasonic snare,
Okay.
so that was good. And the rest of the kit was whatever. It was $50, and that was what I started on. And
Wow.
that was 12 years old. And that tool has gotten me to everything I've accomplished in my life.
Sure.
That little set of $50 drums got me to here,
Sure.
all the way from there to here,
Yeah.
and everything in between.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy,
You know what I love about being a artist here in Cypress, Texas. That's one of the reason I started the show is because I love those kind of stories. I'm kind of that musical junkie, that musical savant that just absorbs that kind of knowledge. And I remember having Jimmy Fortune from the Statler Brothers. I don't know if you've heard of them, but Hall of Fame
Sure.
art country stars, right?
Right.
And Jimmy was telling me, I talked to him for literally 2.5 hours. And I said, how did you get started playing the guitar? He said, we found a guitar at a dump that had two strings on it. And that's where all of this began. And much like your $50 drum set, he probably found a guitar that was not worth even picking up, right? Let
Right.
alone trying to play it. And now he's a 3 or 4 time Hall of Fame guy, right? So it's like
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
you
yeah.
never know, and it doesn't have to be like a $10,000 DW kit, right? It just you got to get started somewhere. Is
Well, I
the
couldn't
thing.
play very loud anyway because I was trying to figure out songs.
Mhm.
So I put rags on my drums, and then I'd have a
Beautiful.
record player. And I remember learning one of the first things I learned was Bab O'Reilly by The Who because I
Okay.
love that boom, 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 you know. And but I couldn't have it louder. It would drown out the record player. We didn't have headphones and all this stuff back then. You know what I mean? We had to figure it out somehow. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
And so, but that's so it was okay. You know what I mean? But later, when I tried to play in bands, the drums weren't that good. You
Yeah.
know?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit earlier about, Deep Purple and Johnny Winter and groups like that that were kind of back in your formidable years of who you were listening to and kind of latching onto. Who do you listen to these days? Do you pay much attention to music coming out these days, or my old story was I turned the radio off in '89 and I never turned it back on again, which is not completely true, but you know what I mean? Like our attention is focused so many different places. I know you've got a lot of things going on. I have a lot of things going on, and I don't sit around and just listen to the radio anymore. Of course, listening to the radio is kind of a thing that was big back in the day, not so big now. But is there anybody that kind of moves you as an artist these days that you latched on to?
Well, there's a lot of good stuff, but I mean, to answer your question, I listen a lot to what my daughter listens to.
Okay.
Okay, so she's 12 years old and she's been playing bass for a year. And we go back and forth, and she'll go, Dad, listen to this. Let me pick a song. And I'll be like, okay, fine. Now let me pick a song and I'll play something for her.
Okay.
And it's usually Aerosmith or it's whatever, you know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes we play this game where I try to find a song that fits something we just talked about. Like, uh, let's go hiking, and Julie, there ain't no mountain higher. And she doesn't know that song. So I'll put on that song, and say, there's a song about that.
Right.
So we play little games like that, you know what I mean?
That's
So
cool.
I wind up listening to a lot of stuff in the car that she wants to hear. And that's Sabrina Carpenter and Bella Porch and all that kind of stuff. She played a talent show, so I had to help her with that
Mhm.
because she wanted to play bass. So I had to do a track and get rid of the bass so she could replace it with her live bass,
Yes.
which was pretty challenging and fun. But
It's
so
really
yeah.
cool. It's really cool, man, because this podcast going on 5 years, that I've been doing this now. It's amazing because it's opened my eyes to so many artists that I probably would have never given a second look, right? That's like, that's not my thing, right? That's not my genre or my forte. But the more you listen, it's like, wow, that's catchy. And then you hear the stories behind the songs, and it just kind of opens your mind. And I think that it's taught me a lot to not just be tunnel visioned. I'm an old rock pig myself, right? All the bands you mentioned, that's this guy here, Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, the list goes on and on and on. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of country stuff that I listen to, a lot of Americana that I listen to now because of this podcast. So it's not a bad thing, right? You listening and learning from your daughter is not a completely bad thing at all.
No, it keeps me. I mean, and there's some really good stuff out there. Like that Ren guy is
Yeah.
crazy good and different. And then there's a sort of this punk side with his Amel and the Sniffers and some fun stuff like that out there. There's a lot of good stuff
Oh
out there
yeah.
right now, and
Oh
it
yeah.
really is. So I'm very open to stuff.
Yeah,
I really
good.
am.
Open mind is a good thing. Well, we fast forward a bit, right? Childhood growing up, listening to the Johnny Winter records to Poison. How did you get introduced to Brett and Bobby and Cece? Where did the meeting come from?
So I grew up playing with one of my best friends. He learned bass and I learned guitar, and we played in every band together. And he was working as a short order cook at a place called the Amity House. No relation to Amityville Horror. And it was kind of close by. And he came over one day and he said, by the way, we need a singer. And I'm like, of course I know that. And we can't find anybody. He goes, there's a guy that just started as a busboy and he's got his own PA. I said, done, bring him over.
Okay.
And it was Brett, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
And we got say hello to whoever's in the background back
I
there.
think
Hey
that might
guys.
have been my son
Somebody
that
just
just my
yeah.
my son who's expecting a baby in a month just
Oh
wrote that.
wow,
So yeah,
okay.
great.
Um so anyway, so he came over and we hit it off and we realized that we had started to have more in common than I did with the other guys I was playing with.
Okay.
We really wanted to get somewhere with it. And little by little, we tried and tried and tried with those guys. But one day we just pulled over one day and said, look, man, these guys are really holding us back. Everything we try to do, it's like pulling teeth. Let's get some enthusiasm in here. So the first thing we needed to do was find another guitar player and a bass player. And by the way, my best friend back then, when we left the band, he never spoke to me again to this day.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah,
Took it
yeah.
hard then. Yeah.
Yeah, he really did. It's a shame because we grew up together. But uh, so I had a friend that was a guitar player, and he said, I said, "Do you know any bass players?" He goes, "Yeah, I do. There's this guy named Bobby Kuykendall that used to play guitar, but now he plays bass, and he started playing bass just because he wanted to audition for this one band." And I went, "Wow, I like that attitude." He's willing to change instruments just to make it work, right?
Mhm.
And so I called him up, and Brett and I met up with him, and he came over and we played a little bit, and we're like, yeah, now we got to find a guitar player. And so that took a while.
Okay.
And then we finally wound up with Matt Smith. The first guitar player we had, the very first one, his name was Jerry Marsicano, and he just passed away a few months ago, by the way.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. But so we wound up with Matt, and then I don't want to say the rest is history because there's a lot of stuff in between.
Yeah.
But I mean, we played the whole back east for a couple of years before we moved out here, and then we moved out here, and then we did that for a year more, and then we got Cece in the band. I'm giving you a brief synopsis,
Sure. Yeah. So you
and
didn't pick CC up until the move to California then, right?
right,
Now
yeah.
was the Long Island scene, was that a big scene for you guys back on the East Coast or not so much?
Not so much New York at the time.
Okay.
The reason is that there was some stuff going on in New York, but it was more on the punk side and new wave side. There wasn't, for one thing, the drinking age was 21 and we were 18, you know what I mean? We couldn't play these clubs.
Mhm.
So it was a lot harder. In Maryland, the drinking age was 18. So we wound up playing Maryland a lot. And then in Pennsylvania, and then we opened for Kicks. We'd find a bunch of opening gigs. Um, and then we started to do our own gigs. We started to rent, you know, skating rinks and VFW halls and sell tickets and promote our own gigs. I mean, it was a lot of work.
Do you remember I guess the move to LA and trying to break into the scene? How difficult, because I guess this was the Sunset Strip, man. Was this a tough scene to break into, or did you guys just fit right into it?
We couldn't figure it out at first. We didn't understand. I mean, the scene at the time. It's a showcase town, meaning you play the clubs to get the industry to come see you. It's not about making money,
Gotcha.
okay? And if you overplay the city, um, you'll start to lose the following. It's because it's not like a family friendly bar down the street where, every other weekend, you have Bill and the guys playing and, they have a following and people always know they can have a good time. It's not like that. Everything is a sensationalized showcase. You know what I mean? That's how it was. So it
Okay.
was hard to make money. So we would go out of town to make money and go do what we were doing in Pennsylvania, which was top 40, mix it with some of our own stuff. And then we'd come back and play Hollywood.
Ah,
See what I mean? So
yeah.
we kind of figured it out that way. But we did all kinds of dirty tricks to come up. We would I remember the first dirty trick we pulled. Um, we were like, I'm like, how are we gonna get people to come up front to the stage? They were afraid to come up to the stage. And we got to thinking, so Brett and I got this idea that we were going to put beers on the front of the stage. So if you wanted to get a
Free
beer,
beer.
you had
You're
to
right.
come up to the front of
Right.
the stage. So then we started with if you want more than that, we are having a party right down the street at this hotel. And as soon as this show's over, we're running down there. So everybody would leave, and the headlining band wouldn't have anybody there.
Ah, oh man.
And they're like, "Wow, the whole crowd was there for you guys."
uh, well, you got to get creative, man. You got to be
Yeah.
remembered somehow. That's what sets you apart. But I guess back then, like at Gazzari's and the whiskey, it wasn't the whole deal. Like uh, they didn't even pay well, I guess they did pay you to play there, but it was all about promoting your own band and selling tickets with flyers and all of that kind of stuff. Was that,
Well,
am I kind of,
yeah, the first couple gigs we did have to buy tickets, but then we quickly figured out how to, get around some of that stuff. And then we were getting paid,
okay, gotcha.
and really, when I say getting paid, it was paying rent and food. I mean, that was it.
Yeah,
And even then we had to supplement our
of
income.
course. Yeah.
But and playing other places and doing, stupid jobs and
Yep.
selling pens and stuff like that,
Right.
whatever we could do, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, we were flyering the hell out of everything. That our focus was always that. But we did something that none of the other bands did, and that was when after we were done playing, we'd run down to the front of the bar, to the exit, and thank people for coming out.
Yes.
Like sincerely say thank you so
Personal
much for
touch. Yep.
coming out.
Uh-huh.
Please come out and see us again. It would be great. We're playing blah blah blah. And we just tell. And some people were smart ass and they you sucked. And then some other people were
Yeah.
like, whatever. But most of the people went, hey, that's really cool. And I think it made a big difference because in Pennsylvania, there were like we used to play this place called the Pine Grove Inn, right? And there was no dressing room. I mean,
Okay.
and there was no stage. We had a drum riser, so we set up on the floor, right? And behind it there was a bathroom, and everybody used the bathroom. That
Right.
was the bathroom, right?
Right. Sure.
So you couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
You had to mix and mingle when you were done. We did 3 sets a night. You had to mix and mingle. So you come out, you go nuts and everything, and then you're sweating and you throw on a different t-shirt or wipe down and then sit down and have a beer with somebody.
Hmm.
I mean, that's how we did it. So we weren't used to like going into like a dressing room and trying to be too cool for school. We didn't even understand how to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't until later we realized that we just couldn't anymore. When we got big enough, we just couldn't do that. It
Yes.
was like,
Yep. You know
and
what? I
but we
bet you,
thought we could.
I bet you sowed a bigger seed by doing that, by going out and touching the people. Yeah, you might have had a few of the clowns that said, "Yeah, you guys sucked," or "We didn't like it," or whatever. But I bet you that did more good for you guys with that personal touch that kept those people attached and following you around. Right?
Absolutely.
It's all about what a book I read a long time ago, Raving Fans. How do we just be that 1% different than the next to retain the attention or the customer or whatever widget you want to throw in the idea, right? But you guys were building rapport with the people that are probably still following you to this day, right? There's no doubt about that.
Well, we'd go in the clubs during the day. Okay. We'd walk down there and walk in the club and say, hey, we just wanted to see if you have anything available or pick up flyers or whatever, tickets or whatever it is. But then, do you mind if I use the bathroom quick? Oh, yeah, no problem. We go in and write shit about ourselves in the bathroom, in the girls' bathroom. And it
uh,
wasn't always good because if you write good stuff, people don't believe you.
no, of
You know what I
course not.
mean?
Yeah,
So, so
that's
we'd mix
awesome.
it up,
Yeah.
some good stuff, some bad stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that's
You guys were innovators. I mean, what can you say? Call a spade, Ricky. Yeah, so you were innovating. You were innovating the
yeah,
Poison brand, right? I mean, that's so
yeah,
awesome. Well, was there a
yeah.
band, you guys arrive in LA, you start getting your name out there and whatnot. Was there another band that you guys latched on to more than another band and became friends with? Or I'm sure there was a lot of them, but was there a main one that you guys latched in with?
We did it a few different ways. Like when we started to branch out into other territories. Like we became friends with Jet Boy, and they were big. They were like Poison in San Francisco,
Okay.
and so they'd open for us here, and we go up there and open for them up there. So we help each other's crowds out. But we would get a lot of once we were big enough, we started getting bands that opened for us, we would get bands that didn't normally play those same clubs. We'd get like bands that were sort of punk bands or not hardcore punk, but more alternative,
Of course.
just because we wanted to try to expose ourselves to a new audience. We didn't,
Oh yeah.
I figured, our way of looking at it was we have this built-in audience now. We're doing well, but they can expose themselves to our audience and we can expose ourselves to theirs. And I probably wouldn't go to Club Lingerie and go see that band, but I'll get them to come and play with us. So that's
100%.
sort of what we did. And it worked, not all the time. It
Sure.
wasn't, but many times we'd get off the beaten path kind of and then we started. Can I swear on this podcast? Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
we had
Absolutely.
a band open for us one time and it was the best. You ready for this? We
Hit
had
me.
a band open for us called Fat and Fucked Up.
That's worth going to see just because of the name, right? What's this band all about? Oh, that's
It was
awesome.
great. It was great.
Too funny.
And people were like, "Oh my, what are you doing? What are you guys doing here?"
Oh, that's awesome. Fat and fucked up. That's awesome. Talk about great branding, right?
Oh, it was
You had to
great.
think about the name for a bit. I mean, it just drew attention to it just by the name itself. Yeah. Well, I think, back in the day for guys and listeners like myself that were never out in that scene, I think there's a lot of mystique and things around what all was going on in LA and the Sunset Strip, right? We've seen the documentaries, we've heard the stories at nauseum, right? What is your fondest memory of the strip when it was in its heyday and you guys were right in the fat middle of all that shit down there?
Honestly, just from a hedonistic standpoint, I think, when we got big enough on the strip, where our name was like, hey, what band are you in? I'm in Poison. Oh, wow. When you get that, when we started to get that reaction, um, it was getting paid, we weren't getting paid except attention.
Yeah.
So we really reveled in the attention,
Yeah.
that was probably the most fun. And, so we, would have quite a few parties,
Yeah.
and enjoy ourselves. Um, and, that was one of the craziest things about it. But you always felt like the next day something wasn't going to happen.
Uh-huh.
Like you were going to play your next gig. You're only as good as your next gig.
Of course.
If you play a gig and you're like, let's say you sold out the Troubadour, and the next time you play the Troubadour, you don't sell it out.
Yeah. They remember that,
It's
right?
really
Yeah.
hard to get that back
Of
again.
course.
So, I mean, it was a constant hustle. I mean, we hustled and hustled and hustled.
Yeah.
And that's when we started to look out to other territories. Like, what would happen if we went to Phoenix and played Phoenix? What would, we have a car, we can get there, it's won't be easy, but we can do it. And that's what we started to do, is start to play other areas,
Sure.
go to different, can't just play a lot of bands that were our contemporaries. That's all they do. They play Hollywood once a month, but they were from here. A lot of them lived with their parents, or they already had their feet planted here. We didn't. The minute we lost money, we were on our ass outside
Mhm.
3,000 miles away from home. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, what's new and exciting for Poison as it relates to new music? Is there anything that you could speak of from the Poison camp that's in the works, that's a pipe dream right now? What can you talk to the listeners about?
We have a tour on the table, and hopefully we can work it out and do it, because we're talking about 2026, 40-year anniversary, like doing like
Wow.
40 shows all across the country, maybe Canada. Hopefully we can go out to other places like Europe, Australia. Man, that'd be great. So that's my wish. That's my hope.
Okay.
We're not getting any younger. The whole band's intact. We're all original members. So I don't think there is any other original member bands left right now that I
Yeah.
know of.
Yeah.
If you can think of one, let me know.
Well, the only one that I can think of, and they've been on my show twice, but it's a band named Zebra, right? And Zebra had some,
Oh, okay.
three guys out of Louisiana, right? Had a
Right.
big hit
They're a
with
great band. Yeah.
Who's Behind the Door, and actually I had Guy Gelso, the drummer, co-host an interview with me not too long ago with Carmine Apiece, of all people, and
I saw Zebra with somebody.
they were out with Loverboy, and I think who else? They might have been out. I don't remember who else they were out with back in the day, but I saw them personally in '83 at the Summit here in Houston. Right, they opened up for Loverboy, so
I want to say Robin Trower or somebody like that.
very well
I
could
think
have
I may
been.
have seen
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
I loved Robin Trower. I'd go
yeah,
see, and there was lots of great stuff. Rory Gallagher.
yeah. But not to
There
go
was a
down the
lot of good.
rabbit hole with that. It's like
I'll
when
go
I
down the rabbit.
when I think of all original bands, I, I mean, I think they're the only ones that really pop to mind. I mean, other than you guys, like that's all original. Usually it's one guy left, right, and it's still the name. Then it's is it a tribute band or a cover band? I mean, you can ask 10 people and they'll all give you 10 different answers, right? But
Right, right.
yeah, but I think it's an accolade in and of itself that you guys have been together since what, 83?
So,
Is that 83?
yeah, it's like 83. I mean,
Okay.
of course, Matt was in the band then. So,
Okay, I got you.
what CC joined in like 86, I believe,
Fair enough. Okay.
something like that. And that's when we made our record. And that's when I say the band began,
Yeah.
truly like in terms of our
Of course.
professional career.
What we
Um,
know it today, right? That's
right,
what we
right.
know of it today. Yeah. Well, what
But
do
I
you
mean, Matt was definitely, I mean, he was in the trenches with us for the
Okay.
first, year or more.
Okay.
He really was. His girlfriend came out. She got off her bundle, and he went back and decided to be a dad. That's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
We weren't making any money, really.
Yeah.
It did for a minute there. It didn't look like it was going to go any further than the club level.
Hmm.
We
And
were
well, you
trying,
you
and
you
we
stuck it out long enough, right? And a lot of people would have probably quit before then too, right? Can't make a dollar. Let me go dig ditches for a living, and we'll just play a show 2 or 3 times a year, and that's it, right? But you guys, it sound like you stuck to your guns, right?
I tell people you got to stick both feet in the water.
Yep.
Maybe with many things in life, or with whatever it is that's really truly your passion. If that's part of the reason why we moved out here. If we would have been in New York, it's a Greyhound ride home, a train ride. I mean, it doesn't, out here. I mean, we're 3,000 miles away from home.
Makes sense. Yep.
So it's sink or swim. You got to make it work.
Yep.
You know, there's no way I wanted to go home. If I was coming home from New York, it's like, hey, I'm visiting, but you come home from California, it's like, what happened?
Yeah. Well, then you'd
What
be
didn't
looked at
work
a
for
certain
you?
way. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
You didn't want to be that guy. And it's kind of what you said. I echo that 100% because when I said I'm going to do a podcast, I literally jumped in with both feet and I said it's either going to be 150% or I'm not going to do it. But that's just my OCD-ness, right? That's just the way I work. And it would have been really easy to look at the statistics after the first interview and say, what, 10 streams, that's it, and said, oh, fuck this, I'm not going to do this anymore. Or I
Yeah,
thought I'd at
of
least
course.
get 100, but 4 years later in 91 countries and over 1 million streams, I mean for a guy that doesn't even try to monetize the show, I'm very happy with where it is. So it kind of all goes back to what you were saying. If you're gonna jump in, I mean, jump into the motherfucker and do it at the end of the day. If you're not,
Where
don't even jump in, right?
where are you at? What city?
I'm right outside of Houston in a city called Cypress. It's like Northwest
Okay.
Houston for all practical purposes. But going back to that longevity and having all the original members, what do you think the key ingredient is that four guys can 40 years stick together somehow and not literally kill each other? You hear this all the time, right? You could look at any documentary or read any book about bands and they're either not all together or whatever. But what do you think the key ingredient was to all you guys making that a brotherhood?
Well, we may have killed each other. Like, now
Sure.
they're talking about that there's like parallel universes and you could have
Sure.
died in another one. There's
Right.
at least seven I've died in with this band.
Okay, fair enough.
So, um, you know, eh, it's God, you hear this and it sounds so trite, and I wish I could say it in a better way. But there isn't a better way than to say teamwork. Okay.
There you
Like,
go. Yep.
I always encourage people. I never thought I'd say this in my life until I really thought about it. But if you want to be in a rock band, you I think you should also go play sports on a team and learn that it's not all about you. Because otherwise, if it's all about you and the other guy in the band's all about him and the other person in the band's all about them, what do you think's going to happen?
Nah,
It, it's it,
it's
it's
destruction in the making, right?
it is, and this is why bands are like what David Lee Roth said, like dogs that chase cars. They make
Yeah.
a lot of noise and they don't last very long. Which no truer words spoken. Um, and so, I mean, there's a million. I mean, I think when we moved here, somebody gave us a statistic, and it was somebody from a magazine, a local magazine. They said there's 30,000 organized and disorganized bands in the greater Los Angeles area.
Wow.
30,000. Now, how are you going to stick out? What are you going to do?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so
Unbelievable.
you gotta check all the boxes.
Yeah.
You got to be ready for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
You got to figure out what's good advice, what's bad advice, and you're going to make mistakes. You got to stick to your guns, but at the same time, be flexible enough to change. I mean, it's like this one of these ninja things, right? Where you have to do so many things in a row to
Yes.
get to the end. It That's what it is. It's
Yes.
literally, and there's some luck and all that kind of stuff, but it's just being open enough to know when you should be open and when you shouldn't be,
I
and
agree.
when you know when to fold them, know when to hold them. You know
That's
what I
it.
mean? Like,
Yep.
Kenny Rogers
Just
had it
like Kenny
right.
said. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned something about it's a team sport, right? If you have a bunch of chiefs in the band, then I mean it's inevitable that it's going to break up. So it really becomes a team effort. When we talk about team sports, it's funny because you're in one that is not a team sport, and that's the art of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And I wanted to just touch base on that because I rolled for a while in BJJ, and I've had three guys on my show, all of which were fighters in the UFC, and one is a Hall of Famer from the UFC. And there's an interesting thing that they do say about BJJ, but I wanted to shift that focus a little bit and I had no idea that you were a black belt or probably a multi-degreed black belt by now in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But where did that passion come from, and when did you start practicing the art?
I've always loved, I love Bruce Lee and all that stuff. So
Okay.
I've always been interested in the martial arts. Um, I almost got stabbed in LA back when in the day. And so when we made a little bit of money, Brett and I hired Mark Dacascos to come out and teach us some, kickboxing. And I said, I really want to learn knife fighting. He said, well, you really want to go to some of the JKD, Ishin, Danny Inosanto's people like that. Some of the Screama, and I'm just like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay.
And so later when I came off the road, that's what I did. I tracked down a guy named Cass Magda. He's direct lineage from Danny Inosanto, Bruce Lee, and did knife fighting, did all that stuff. And in that, uh, I did some C-lot. He did some that Southeast Asian. C-lot is like a loose grappling, right?
Okay. Okay.
At least the type that I learned. Some of it's different. There's a bunch of different versions. And it put me in touch with wrestling, which is what I did in school. And then I found out about Hoist Gracie, and
Sure.
I was like, hmm. Then I met John Jock Machado. And he said, just come to the school, check it out. I went down to that school, and I'm sure you know who Eddie Bravo is.
Sure. Yeah.
Eddie Bravo was in there, David Meyer, all these original Dirty Dozen black belts and stuff. And I just got chewed up and spit out, man. I was just like, and I said to myself, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either never coming back here, or I'm coming back here every day.
Right.
And I was just like, I sat, I mean, I literally ate my ego. Like I
Yeah.
seriously thought I was a badass, and I realized I was
Yeah.
not a badass.
You,
And
you don't know what it's like until you get caught in a cross collar choke with a gi on, right? Then you understand what it feels like, right? Right.
I signed up. I took some money and I signed up for 6 months. I decided I was going to commit to 6 months and see if I
Okay.
could get
All right.
through.
Yep.
And alls I did was defend. For that first 6 months, all I did was defend, 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 defend. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't think I choked anybody. I don't think I got an arm bar. I don't think I got anything for the
Yeah.
first 6 months. All I did was get railed. And I've never been a fast learner, right? It's
Okay.
always been like, oh, yeah, Ricky, tell him about 6 or 8 times, and then another 6 or 8 times. But after that 6 months, I was like, I'm going to go another 6 months. And then I started figuring the game out. After a year, I started to figure it out.
Yep.
And back then, man, I mean, that was the wild west of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Sure.
Everybody was trying to figure it out. They were
Yeah.
coming in. We'd have dojo busts. People, and literally, people would come in and say, I heard about this. I think it's bullshit, and want to fight you.
Of course. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
They
they
learned a
come into the
lesson real
class.
quick too, didn't
Yeah.
they?
And so I was like, I better get good quick because I'm going to have to defend myself being in this sport,
Sure.
being in this discipline
Yeah.
because we had to defend it. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it challenged a lot of things.
Right.
And and I think it's still challenging things. Now people are like, everybody's figured it out, Everybody's figured out, everybody gets a little bit of jujitsu, we can, and so now we're defending it a different way.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's great stuff. I do think I mean, we are a team in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And we talked about COVID before. During COVID, we trained, but the way we did it was we had a little thing set up. You'd go in, you'd sign your name, you would test, you'd turn on the timer, you'd wait 15 minutes, and if you were clear, go in and train.
Really.
And nobody ever got sick.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you look back on the early days of the UFC when that hit the airwaves back in, I'm horrible with dates. What was it, in the 90s or something like that? When Hoist Gracie made his way into this is back, no holds barred. There weren't even any rules. I think this was pre Dana White and Tillman Fertitta, right? And nobody could figure him out, right? He would slap you around, and then the first thing next thing you know, you're on the ground, and you got, it's like an anaconda on you, and you don't know, if you're a stand-up guy, you don't know how to defend against that, because first time you raise an arm, all you did was give yourself a death wish, right? Because we
Yeah,
know what's going to
exactly.
happen if you
Yeah.
give somebody an
Yeah.
arm, right? It's going to be an arm
Yep.
bar, right?
Yeah.
So, but you trained under Hickson Gracie, right? That's where you came up through. Am I right or wrong there?
No, I've done a seminar with
Oh, a
Hicks
seminar.
on,
Okay, okay.
but no, I went from white belt to purple belt under the Machado brothers. And
Gotcha.
then their lead instructor, Renato Magno, who came over from Brazil with them, who's their cousin, uh, he started his own school. And I went on tour. And when I came back, his school was up and running. And he said, just come out, check out the school. And so I did. And I just really liked, by then I had my son and I had to do morning classes and to make it work time wise for me. And I kind of just really like that team over there.
Sure.
And I still love John Jock. And anytime I get a chance to go over and train with him or train with some of his people or Dave Dunn or any of those guys, it's always an eye-opening experience,
Sure. Well, I
I
don't.
haven't been training as much as I
Okay,
did,
I got you.
and it's just been because of so many factors.
Yeah,
Uh, but I hate it when I don't get to train.
I
I
bet.
really do.
Well, I think that you know when we think of a martial art that people put their kids in, it seems like historically everybody gravitates to Taekwondo. It just seems like the catch-all martial art, and next thing you know, little Bobby is a red belt, and then the following week he's like a yellow belt, and like the promotions are like bam, bam, bam. And it's like, really, you get promoted that much? Because I remember when I was over at Revolution, I mean, it's years in between belt promotions, right? Can you speak a little bit about that to the listeners when we talk about going from white to blue or blue to purple or whatever, and then to brown, or like there's years in between these promotions, correct?
Yeah, years. I mean, it took me 12 years or something like that. I mean, it was a long
I
time.
was going to say, if
And
you're a
and
black belt, it was at least a decade to get to black belt,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a fourth degree, but you don't even get your first, you don't start with a first degree black belt. You have to get your first degree. And then you can be a teacher if you want to be. So, and then it's 5 years. It's 3 years for the first two, and then 5 years for the next two. So, it takes a long time. That's why most of the guys that have like coral belts are over 50
Yeah.
typically. It takes a long time. There's some younger people coming up now. I haven't been training in the gi very much lately. I've been almost exclusively no gi, not for any other reason except it just uh, most of my training's been on Fridays when we have no gi day,
Yeah.
Footlock Friday we call it,
Yeah.
and but no, I mean I love the gi. Don't get me wrong, but it's a
Yeah.
different game, and
Yeah,
I
for
got to
sure.
get back to the gi a little bit because
Okay.
let's face it, when you're out in the world, you're gonna wind up grabbing clothes and all that stuff.
Well, you're not going to be wearing a gi everywhere you go, right? So
No,
you
but
better know, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
well, so that's a huge accolade for you, man. And it's not easy to come across. Not many people say I'm a black belt in jujitsu. So to me, when I hear that, it's like somebody that's disciplined and has built their life around the sport, right? I mean, you just don't go and somebody hands it to you, right? You really have to go earn it. I just understand that game very well. And it's interesting. I don't know too many celebrity type people that tout martial arts too much, but there was one that was interesting to me, and Ed O'Neill, right? Al Bundy
yeah.
from Married with Children is a black belt, and I had no idea. I'm like, wow, I would have never guessed that he was a practitioner of BJJ, right?
You know what? He came in one day to the club. He's friends with David Mamet. David Mamet's a playwright who's also a director, filmmaker. You may know him. He's got tons of books, and his daughter's got a Tony Award, and he's if you know, you know kind of guy.
Yes.
Anyway, he's a tough guy, and he's really good friends with Ed. And Ed, of course, is a Gracie guy, but he brought him over one day,
Okay.
and then we all went out to lunch, and I'm like, this is so cool. I'm hanging out with Ed O'Neill, right?
Right.
And we're at Il Forno, which is an Italian restaurant there in Santa Monica, and somebody was screaming like somebody like maybe 20 feet away from us, right? And it's one of those things that just, you turn around and you like look, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
what the hell is going on?
Right.
And somebody looked over towards our table because we all had looked around. Of course, we go like this because all of our necks are messed up, right? But anyway, Ed got this look in his face, like he meant business.
Mhm.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Al Bundy went from funny Al Bundy
Right.
to like this maniac
Yeah.
and like looking like if shit's going to go down, I'm right there.
It's
Like
on. Yeah.
I saw it. I saw it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was after that, there was no more mystery for me about
His
about
capability
him.
or his
Yeah.
confidence. Sure. Yeah.
I could just see he
Wow.
had a
Interesting.
50-yard stare,
Wow.
this guy,
Business,
you
huh?
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, Al Bundy's a badass, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, good stories there are on the mat. Like, what a great sport. And, I had a guest on my show a few years back to kind of shift on you a little bit, but, um, that was a big ghost hunter, right? A band out of Louisiana called Lillian Axe, and
Sure.
Stevie Blaze, the guitarist, was on my show, and this whole ghost hunter thing that he has going on, and it was interesting as I started diving into Rikki Rockett. Right, you found out that Ricky's into the has a fascination of the paranormal activities. When did this start for you? Like what brought on the interest?
I've been into horror films and haunted houses and all that stuff ever since I can remember. I went to the Amityville house back when I lived in Pennsylvania, like every month to see if anything changed. Like,
Okay.
am I going to see something tonight? Because at Long Island's not that far. Um, and yeah, and I'd go to Ray Myers Hollow. I was just always like, looking for ghosts. I always thought that was. And now these days, I don't chase ghosts as much as I like to think. I have this legend tripping channel. I'm out checking out urban legends.
Okay.
I like to solve that.
Okay.
That is my jam,
Okay.
and that's something that's only been a few years, in the making.
Sure.
Um, I just love it because it's almost like it's paranormal in reverse, is what I call it. It's
Yes.
reverse paranormal.
Okay.
It's like what happened, what's supposed to happen, and if it did, is there ghosts because of it? Not, I'm looking for ghosts. I
Okay. Yeah.
heard that there might be something. I want to know who died there first.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the first thing I want to know. But so I just signed a deal with a new company, and they're pitching it. So we'll
Interesting.
see. I don't
Yeah.
like to say anything about that stuff. It's so Hollywood. Oh, we're going to get a show. I don't know if I'll get a
Yeah.
show.
Right on.
If they're smart, they'll give me a show because I think it'll be a great show. I
Yeah.
promise you.
Yeah. Right on.
But yeah.
Well, it's I was going to ask you. I mean, if you're a ghost, well, first of all, and I promise you, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole with the Amityville horror, but it's interesting because I, like you, I'm not a paranormal guy, but I saw the show as a kid, right? And I've read the books and the stories of the DeFeo family, and not at nauseum, but I know the course of events, right? What's your take on Amityville, the house? Do you believe that there was something going on there after the murders of the DeFeo family? Not so much with what we know as the hoax or whatever, but what's your take on Amityville, just in general?
I'm not sure because I haven't been inside the house. I tried to buy it, by the way. I actually thought about doing it. I talked to the owner, um, and he was like, "Hey, we're redoing the kitchen. If you buy it, you can pick out the colors." And I was like, but I didn't want to bring my kids into that scenario. I mean, I was
Sure.
thinking, my kids would grow up in that house, even if haunted or not, everybody's gonna think they're weird. So,
Yeah.
um, so let me say this. Certain places do have an energy. And if it didn't have an energy before, it does now because everybody believes
Yes.
something is there.
Yeah.
So you can't go there and not feel something, right? You're going to feel something when you go to the Amityville house, even if don't believe in anything,
Yeah.
because so many other people believe in it.
Of course.
It's like I think if you go to the Holy Land, right? And
Sure.
I haven't been there, but if you're an atheist, you're going to go to the
Yes.
Holy Land. You're going to feel something,
Of course. Yeah.
because there's been so much
Good point. Yeah.
all
Good
our
point.
life. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Or Santa Claus. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I mean, it's like
Sure.
Santa Claus might as well exist for real
Of
because
course.
we've manifested Santa Claus.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we manifest stuff. We believe it so much we manifest it,
Yeah.
literally.
I think so.
And but I do think a lot of this paranormal stuff is physics. I think it comes down to physics. I'm not sure if it's quantum physics or what. It could come down to consciousness. Human beings share consciousness a lot of times. We heard about raising the collective consciousness. Then, that, of course, does somebody have to be alive to have that?
Yeah.
Or does our consciousness die when we die? There's so many questions, and
Yeah.
that's what keeps me going
Sure.
to experiment. What happened at this bridge that I heard about? I'll just expose myself to it and find
Yeah.
out, do I feel anything? Do it,
Yeah.
and I'll dig into this stuff and see what I can come up with.
Yeah.
I'm not a naysayer, but at the same time, I don't like the wool pulled over my eyes either. I don't want to feel like an idiot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'm a little bit like that too, Ricky. It's I guess you could say I'm a skeptic by nature, and I think it's with like I just don't believe everything everybody tells me or I see on the internet. Like I'm just not that guy. I like to go and dig into things and like to do a little homework myself. But being that skeptic, just not being the paranormal or ghost guy, I look at what you do or what Stevie Blaze does, and I'm like, really, guys? I mean, have you really seen a ghost? Like that's Randy for you, right? But do you
I've had two experiences, but that were bad. But let me just say this. Honestly, I think 98% of it is BS. But I
okay?
think that
All right.
2% is
Sure. Okay.
truly, that 2% is truly amazing.
Fair
Okay.
enough. Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
what makes me want to keep going at it
Yes.
and makes it interesting because and what is it? What if everything? I always look at it like, what if everything out there that we've heard about has some kernel of truth?
Yeah. It'd be
All the way
interesting,
down
wouldn't
to
it?
leprechauns. I mean, I don't
Yes.
care what it
Sure.
is. All
Right.
this shit came from
Yes.
somewhere,
Yes, it
right?
did. Yep.
And and it's interesting to get to it. I just think some of it has a lot of truth and some of it has about that much. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's fun for kind of distilling that
Sure. Well,
truth.
I think maybe I can latch on to the whole energy thing, like because and you said it best. Like if you go to the Vatican, you're probably going to feel an energy there, and I don't doubt that for a minute. I'm not some Christian guy. I'm not this atheist guy, but I could say if I went to the Vatican, uh, I mean, just the hype around it would be energy alone. But I've had a good friend of mine say, yeah, I was in my room one night and the chair started rocking. And I'm like, like I have a hard time wrapping my arms around a story like that. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't. It's just that I don't believe it unless I see it with my own two eyes, right? So I didn't know if people say I'm a ghost chaser, is there something, do you have to believe in ghosts to be a ghost chaser, or are you just going to feel the energy? Like, can you
Yeah,
speak
I
to that?
don't
I don't
think
know if my
so.
question makes sense or not, but hopefully
Sure.
you get where I'm going with that, right?
I think there's ghost believers and I think there's paranormal investigators.
Okay.
I know quite a few. There's people in my group, the TAPS group, that they don't know what to believe. They don't
Sure.
know if it's
Okay.
string theory. They don't know what it is. They just know there's something going on.
All
There's
right.
something beyond just the natural.
Okay.
And, some of this can be tested.
Okay.
I think we're at a point in time where we got to get past, flashlights and lit cat balls to figure
Right.
this out.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yep.
I think we need some real science. And I think if we do get some real science, I think we might be surprised about what some of this phenomenon might be,
Sure.
because there is some scientific back physics that says that we do live on space-time continuums, and
Okay.
I mean I could get very, very, very deep
Yeah.
with all this
Sure.
stuff, and
Yep.
and how do you test all this stuff? How do
Of
you
course.
test it?
Yep.
It's math at one point, some
Yep.
of it.
Well, I was wondering from your opinion, and let's just go on record to say that um, we can also strike this portion of the interview. But I wanted to ask you, like you see these things because I live close to Galveston, Texas, on the coast, and there's a lot of belief that a lot of the old homes that were built back in the 1800s and places are haunted. So you see these advertisements, sign up for a ghost hunt, and you get a flashlight, like you said, and we go ghost hunting. Is that just, do you feel like that's a money making Ponzi scheme, or is there some legitimacy to that? Or B, do you plead the fifth and just don't want to answer that? Right. Because I kind of look at
I
it, I'm
do
like,
think a
really?
lot
Yeah.
of, yeah, some of it's BS, I think. But I
Okay.
mean, let's say you went to a place where 12 people were murdered mercilessly.
Hmm.
There's a lot of energy there.
Yeah,
There's energy there. There's got to be some kind
sure,
of energy.
of
I mean, you
course.
had this one guy at NYU that was this one doctor that was doing, MRI scans and stuff of on corpses 2 days after they were dead and seeing some, not electrolytical activity, but seeing some brain activity. So what is it, that's different about what gives us our consciousness? Is that consciousness that's lighting up in there? Are we conscious after we die? Wouldn't that?
Of
It's a
course.
horrible thought, right?
Who would know,
Um,
right?
or,
Who
or,
would
or
know?
or is the conscious different
Yes,
when you die?
yes,
And so if he's right, and somebody had their brain splattered on the wall because somebody shot him, I mean, there you have consciousness splattered on the wall.
hmm,
So, I mean, I know I'm getting really nasty right here
yeah, no,
with
no,
some, but I mean, just take it from there and
of
look at
course.
it. Does it go away
Yeah,
eventually?
yeah,
Or is it absorbed? Yeah, everything kind of like moves up into the atmosphere and, ashes to ashes, or does consciousness stick around somehow or go
exactly.
somewhere? Or is it just gone when you die?
Well,
It's hard to say.
yeah, it is. And but it's all very thought provoking, right? Which is kind of cool. It stimulates the brain, whether you believe in ghosts, whether you don't believe in ghosts or Santa Claus or whatever the, mythological character is of the day, right? It still is thought provoking. And it's kind of cool to say, well, what if there is some energy there? What if there is, something like I don't know. I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about it, but it's interesting thoughts. That's why, I knew that you were really into that, and I wanted to bring it up because I think there's a curiosity with everybody, especially ones that have never had an encounter, right?
Well,
And
there's
I can't say that I have, so that's why I'm probably I wouldn't say a naysayer, but I mean, I would kind of have to see it to say, oh, okay, now I believe it, kind of thing, right? But I've just
I
never had
mean,
that experience with it, so
yeah, I mean, look, my son the other day was bummed because he got to the end of a video game,
okay,
right?
yep,
And he said the guy died, and he goes, it's kind of sad, kind of bums me out. I'm
yeah,
like, hold on a second, Jude. This is a video game with fake characters, fake personalities. None of this is real. And you're feeling something because
yes,
of this. Same thing happens with a movie. You're watching fiction, you're reading fiction. These are not real characters,
yeah,
okay? And you're feeling something. It's not that hard to imagine that we're feeling a lot of other things that
good
aren't
point,
there too,
good point,
okay?
yep,
So this makes it very confusing. So you have to kind of wipe the emotion out of stuff in order
okay.
to get to the root of it.
That
You know
makes
what I
sense.
mean?
Yeah, no, nicely stated, and that makes perfect sense. A minute ago, we talked about poison, and you mentioned Rockett Mafia. I wanted to shift a little bit to Rockett Mafia. This is still a thing for you, right? And this is an active project for you. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we're playing this upcoming Friday.
Okay.
So 4 days from now. So we have a show. Like I said, it's part of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. It's a fundraiser. It's a free show. People can donate to it. And we don't ask that you do. We just ask a donation. It can be $1, it can be 100,
Okay.
whatever you want to do.
Yep.
And so it's at the Ovation in Hollywood at 7 o'clock. But all day there's a motorcycle show and all kinds of raffles and all kinds of fun stuff, food to try, and
Okay.
it's like a little mini festival over there. But then we're gonna top it off at the end of the night and play. And uh, Stefan Adika rather, is going to play bass for us that night, and he has a podcast,
Okay.
Adika Live. So
Okay.
definitely he,
Good to
he
know.
interviews people, and I
Awesome.
did an interview with him, and I had known him prior. We were like 10 feet of knowing each other for 20 years. And got along really well and stayed in touch over the last year. And I'm like, no, wait a minute, you play bass, and I need a bass player next Friday. So he's going to do it. So I'm pretty
That,
happy about that. Rocket Mafia, by the way, just so you know, we're doing a lot of cover songs.
okay.
We're going to be doing some Poison deep cuts that Poison doesn't do. Um, but we're trying to take it like all these songs that we do, a lot of 70s stuff and everything, and make it sound like we wrote all those songs and
Okay.
That's the goal, is to make
So
them all.
it's your spin on those songs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. I follow you.
And so we're just having a blast with it, you
Yeah.
know?
A quick shout out to Eric and Shannon for hooking us up and allowing us the chance to hear your story, Rikki, and to reiterate it, and a lot of good stuff there. Where can the listeners find Rockett Mafia, you, all things you, on social media? Can you plug the social media real quick?
Yeah. So I mean, Rockett Mafia has an Instagram and a Facebook page, and a YouTube, and that's where I Think I Love You. We made that
Partridge
song.
Family, yeah.
So that's up there.
Awesome.
So you can go listen to that. And Rikki Rockett .com, and at Rikki Rockett for all my Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. It's all just my name.
Yep.
And my YouTube channel is The Poison Drummer.
The Poison Drummer. Okay. All right.
And my second channel is Rikki Rockett's Legend Tripping.
Okay. Awesome. Rikki,
Yeah.
well, listen, I thank you so much for joining myself and the listeners of Backstage Pass Radio. I wish you continued good health and success, and hope the family is well. And thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
We went a little longer than I thought, but it's easy to talk about the things that we love, right?
Yeah,
At the end
absolutely.
of the day. I asked the listeners to check out Poison's website also at poisonofficial.com. And then I asked the listeners to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on Facebook at Backstage Pass Radio Podcast, on Instagram at Backstage Pass Radio, and on the website at backstagepassradio.com. You guys remember to take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you right back here on the next episode of Backstage Pass Radio.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Backstage Pass Radio.
Backstage Pass Radio.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and gained some new insights into the world of music. Backstage Pass Radio is heard in over 80 countries, and the streams continue to grow each week. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave reviews on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us bring you even more amazing content. So join us next time for another deep dive into the stories and sounds that shape our musical landscape. Until then, keep listening, keep exploring, and keep the passion of music alive.